Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members and guests. Welcome to tonight's presentation. I am, of course, Dennis Baker, your host for this evening, club president, and your presenter this evening. So before we get started with that, let me remind you that next Monday evening, we have no meeting. That's December the 5th, okay? The week after that, December the 12th, is a competition. Bryson Leidig will be judging the images, and there is no theme. So keep in mind that we've asked Bryson to be critical. An image review is just to get the reviewer's opinion of your image, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. Competitions are a little bit different. We're looking for your best work. So please consider entering an image. The deadline for that is Thursday, December the 8th. Upload your image to the website. Next week is the time to deliver your prints to Calc for the exhibit. Monday the 5th, Tuesday the 6th, or Wednesday the 7th, or the 3 days. I very, very much hope that you are planning to participate in the exhibit. We want to make this a good showing. What is different from other exhibits is that I have no idea how many people are planning to enter, because last year we had you send me stuff. This year we're not doing it that way. So if you have any questions about the exhibit, shoot me an email, but please deliver your prints to Calc December 5, 6, or 7. That's next week. Okay, let's turn it over to Joe to hear about trips.
Okay, well, thank you, Dennis. We have a trip this coming Saturday on the 3rd of December to Gerhardt Machinery. And is Eve Smith with us this evening? Eve, are you there? No, she is not. Okay. The Gerhardt Machinery is a machinery tractor company, and they have all these old tractors and trucks in a big field. And we're welcome to go and to photograph to our heart's content these very old vehicles. You probably saw that in the email that the club sent out on the trip, and it is truly remarkable. And what you'll need is you might want to wear, it's going to be 51 degrees in the morning there. So if you are going to attend, you might want to wear like some rain pants or something like that, because if the grass is moist, it is going to be high humidity. If it is moist, you may have some dew, and you want to get down really, really low to be able to shoot these. And anything from a wide angle to normal to maybe a very short telephoto, if you ever use that at all. And either a tripod or none, depends on your preference. So Eve, Dennis, and Mike Donovan are going to be working together to lead that particular trip. And then on the 17th, I just mentioned this one, on the 17th of December, we're having a City Island photo walk. Is Mary Fox with us tonight? No, Mary is not. This is in the afternoon around 3 o'clock, and we've had some real good successes on this particular trip. We're going to be photographing along the river, so you'll be able to photograph the ducks and the geese and all the waterfowl. But also there's some old buildings there, the bathhouse, which makes a really cool photograph. And then it's near the stadium, and they'll have Christmas decorations up, and those are really kind of cool to photograph. Plus the buildings that they use for the kids' rides and stuff, they'll be closed, but it makes interesting sort of architectural kind of stuff. So those are the two things that we have coming up. So that is it, Dennis.
Very good. Thank you, Joe. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, Joe, can you see my screen at this point?
I can see it just peachy.
Very good, very good. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about my phone camera story, because we're going to talk about how to take not only good, but amazing pictures with your phone camera. I was a reluctant cell phone user. Years ago, it took me a long time for my wife to convince me to get a cell phone. And when I did, I kind of got accustomed to it a bit, but I rarely used it to take pictures because I just didn't feel that it was up to par of my, big boy cameras, as we say. Then in 2019, when I had the iPhone 8 Plus, my wife and I scheduled a trip to the Scandinavian islands via the Regal Princess. And on that trip, of course, I took my regular cameras, but I also took my iPhone, but I was committed to taking lots of pictures with my phone and testing it. Now, this is an iPhone 8 Plus back in 2019, and I wanted to see if it was worth the hype because of the, how the companies have hyped the use of the phone cameras and a lot of people are using them. And I said, can it really keep up with my regular camera? So I took a lot of pictures, and I'll show you some here in a second. And when I came back, I picked out some that I liked the best out of the cell phone pictures, and I processed them in Lightroom Classic. Okay, so and that's one thing you need to keep in mind is that even though I shot them with my iPhone, I processed them in Lightroom Classic, and that helped in some ways that I will talk about as we proceed here. But the images that you see here are ones from that trip. This one I used a special filter or a camera app, processing app, to add the birds and that textured look. And when you were looking behind me, or as you have seen the background at previous meetings, which you probably can't see very well now, the pictures behind me were all taken on this very trip. Some of them are the same pictures. So the ultimate test for me was to print them. And I thought, well, if I print them as a 5x7, that's not going to prove anything. Let's push the limits a little bit. Let's print them as 12x18s. Well, I was duly impressed. And things have only improved with the phone cameras since then. So I'm going to talk with you a little bit about some of those improvements and what you can do now with your camera. But let's look at a few of the pictures that I've taken. So these first set is with the iPhone 8 Plus in August of 2019 on the cruise. And I'll talk about this in a minute, but they were all taken with the native iPhone camera, the one that comes with the camera or with the phone. And these were either taken in the HEIC format or the JPEG format. And I'll go into more detail about that in a minute. And they were processed in Lightroom Classic. That did make a difference. So now I could have processed them on the phone or on the iPad on those apps, but I chose to do it in Lightroom Classic. That's just a disclaimer. Okay, so this is a reflection. Most of these, the beginning ones, were taken in Copenhagen. And before I proceed any further, let me just say that I am currently, I'm using an iPhone 14 Pro Max now, but a lot of what I'm talking about is applicable to all of the different phone cameras. I'll try to let you know when some things are specific to just the 14 or the 14 Pro Max, but a lot of the concepts are the same. I'm not promoting Apple. I'm not promoting the iPhone necessarily. That just happens to be the one that I use. Okay. You should keep in mind that the features of the phone, well, you already know that, the features of the phone, but also the features of the cameras can change anytime the manufacturer updates the operating system. Okay, so when there's a change, of course, you ought to do some investigation to find out, what are the enhancements, what are the changes of the new operating system, and specifically, how does that affect the camera in my phone? It's always a good idea to keep your phone updated. So go into the settings, and I have mine just set to automatically update. But I check that if I hear there's an update available to make sure that that's happening. Now, tonight, I'm going to switch back and forth between this PowerPoint presentation and actually my phone. Okay, a little bit the way Patty Volpe did a couple of weeks ago at her presentation to show you use of the actual phone and the settings and so forth. And the PowerPoint presentation is just going to give you some highlights. And I'm going to address those talking points, we can call them. But I have a handout for you that I'll send you a copy of tomorrow in the follow-up email. And everything I talk about, plus quite a bit more, is listed in that handout. Okay, so no need to take notes, wait for the handout. I think it's about 15 pages as a PDF document, but I've been doing extensive research, not just when I had the 8 Plus, but since I got the iPhone 14 Pro Max month and a half ago, been researching that extensively, and there's some very, very interesting changes. Okay, a couple more shots around Copenhagen. Oh, this is one where I used a little dodging and burning in Lightroom. And you can do the same thing in the apps that are available on the iPad or the iPhone, but I darkened the whole scene and then lightened the painting, to draw your attention to that. This one, if you look carefully, has a painterly effect applied. And the painterly effect was actually applied with an app in the iPhone. Now, we're not going to have time to get into the apps and the processing. We're talking about the characteristics of the phone camera, its settings, its features, and how it works. And if you so desire, I could possibly do another presentation at some point on other aspects. But one thing I am planning, if you're interested, is a more in-depth and a more hands-on presentation at the Mechanicsburg Arts Center sometime in the next couple of months. I'm looking at a 4 class. In fact, I'll send the details to you tomorrow in the follow-up email, because that's already, no, that we haven't set yet. I'm sorry. I have a class with Calc coming up. We haven't set the iPhone class yet with the Mechanicsburg Arts Center. So that'll be up and coming. Okay, some of these were pretty challenging situations for an iPhone 8 Plus, with the lighting. It's open shade here, the model. These are some friends of ours. The guy is plays the piano for a band that has, well, it was Paul Revere and the Raiders, Paul Revere's originally, and they've disbanded, but they were on the trip with us, and I did some digital dodging and burning in this shot too for that one. That's pretty straight. This one, let me tell you the story, and it kind of brings out one of the things that I really like about the phone camera. This was taken in Kristiansand, Norway. Okay. In the morning, we were on a smaller, this is the Regal Princess that you're seeing here, but we went out on a smaller ship in the pouring rain. I mean, it was miserable, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. So as we traveled around on this smaller ship all around the alcoves and so forth of that part of Norway on the coast, I took all kinds of pictures with my big lenses and the big camera, trying to shield it from the rain and all that. So we're out there for over 2.5 hours in the cold rain, and a lot of people just hid. I stayed out and photographed. I was wet. I was cold. We were coming back to get off that smaller ship and make our way over to the Regal Princess. So I put all my big gear away, and I'm coming. It's in the bag. It's raining. I'm wet and I'm cold. And I'm coming down the ramp, and I look up and I see, holy cow, that's a reflection of our ship in the Gilden Performing Center, right there near the water in Kristiansand, Norway. I said, that's a shot. I can't pass that up. Those are the glass plates, and then that's that part above it, and the brown wavy is just a feature like of the roof coming down. But I didn't have time. The group was moving. I didn't have time to get my big camera out. So I quickly grabbed my iPhone 8 Plus out of my pocket, boom, 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 grabbed a couple of shots. And out of the 7,300 pictures I took that whole trip, this is probably my favorite. Could not have gotten it, did not have time to get it access it with my regular cameras, but the iPhone was there and did an admirable job. Then in late October, I picked up the iPhone 14 Pro Max. And the pictures that you'll see now, just a couple, were taken again with the native camera that comes with the phone. And I'll talk about other cameras that you can download, but the native camera. And these were taken in the HEIC format also, or ProRAW, which I'm going to explain. Okay. None of these were taken as regular JPEGs. Okay, and I'll explain why. And they were also processed in Lightroom Classic. Some of you may have seen this one on the Facebook page. Another macro shot, dandelion, spider web, backlit. And this was at the trip we took up to Pine Grove Furnace. And the neat thing about this is, and I'll demonstrate this in a little bit, is the depth effect that you can use with the camera. When I shot it, I focused, of course, on the sign. And one of the things with the phone cameras a lot of times is you can't get the limited depth of field effect that we like with our big cameras. So I'd want to blur the background because it's kind of distracting, but a lot of times you can't do that. Well, if you shoot in the right format, okay, you can. If you shoot in that HEIC format, okay, you can, with the native camera, adjust the blurriness of the background. You're not doing it the same way we would do it with our DSLRs or mirrorless cameras, but it can be simulated. And what you're going to find throughout this presentation is there are a lot of things that the phone cameras don't do the same way that our DSLRs and mirrorless cameras do. They just don't operate the same way, but they simulate the effect through the software. Okay. This is for the folks who saw it on Facebook or went to the Zoo America at Hershey Park. This is, this was dark. I mean, it was very dark, and I held the phone right up against the glass, which is a real advantage for iPhones, because if you have your DSLR or your mirrorless camera, you've got the lens hooded normally. So unless you have one of those collapsible rubber lens hoods, which you can put up against the glass, it becomes a little awkward. And then the light comes in from the side, if there is any, and reflects back into the lens and gives you that glare you get on the glass so often. So with a phone camera like an iPhone, you can put it flat up against the glass. And I do that like if I'm at the zoo here or in an aquarium, like the Baltimore Aquarium, boom, that would go right up against the glass. And it works out really well. You see no glass, no reflections then, from the glass. Two leaves, one on top of the other, and I like that leathery look of the, I think it's an oak leaf underneath. This is a super wide angle with the iPhone Pro Max, and that's a dandelion. So I've got the phone down on the ground, making it look huge, and the sun in the background there. That's a macro shot. Okay. So I probably won't have time to address all your questions tonight, but if you do have a question or comment, would you make it in chat? And I'll try to monitor that, multitasking. And if you have a question that I don't answer tonight, I will answer that via a private email to you tomorrow sometime. Okay? So if you want to follow along, well, the first thing we're going to do is look at some settings for your phone. So I'm going to do my tricky little thing here and change shares. I'm going to go to the phone. We want to open up the settings in your phone and show you what to do there, what settings I would recommend. Okay, give that a minute. Hopefully that'll pop up. 1001, 1002, 1003. Ah, can you see my phone, Joe? Okay.
Yes, sir, Dennis, we can.
Very good. Let's go to settings. So if you're following along, now remember, I've got an iPhone 14 Pro Max. If you don't, your settings might be a little different. If you're not using an iPhone, your settings might be considerably different. But let's see how it goes. At least I'll show you what this phone has, and then you can compare it to what you have. Like I say, you can ask questions and in chat if you have them. So I scroll down until I get down here to camera. And this is an important thing to do because there are a couple things in here that really are important. The first thing we're going to look at are those formats that I talked about first. So let me tap formats. Okay, there's high efficiency, most compatible, and down there's Apple ProRAW that I've turned on. Well, it doesn't say anything about JPEG or HEIC, does it? Well, it does in the fine print. If you read carefully underneath there, if you look at most compatible, if I tap that, now it's on most compatible. That's the JPEG mode, okay? Here's who I recommend shoot in JPEG mode. No one. don't use it. If your camera is set to JPEG mode and you have the option to go to high efficiency, do so. High efficiency is the HEIF or HEIC format, and it's fairly recent. You know, JPEG's been around for a long, long time. HEIC was not developed by Apple, but it has been adopted by Apple, and more companies are coming along. It is, well, as I say, it's more efficient. It is a smaller file with better quality overall than a JPEG file. Now, that's a good combination, but here's the kicker. It's actually a container that has more to it than just that one picture. It can hold a short video in which you can do special effects via the live photo mode that I'll show you in a couple minutes. Okay, you can only do that if it's on high efficiency, because then you're shooting HEIC format. JPEG's outdated. Yeah, for shooting. Yes, you need JPEG to share. That's typically when we send an image, put it on Facebook, you send it in an email, use a JPEG. JPEG is no longer a good format to use for capture. So if you want to capture an image, don't use JPEG. Use high efficiency, which is the ACIC, or as we're going to talk about in a minute, ProRAW. Okay. Now, as photographers, I don't have to get into, probably don't have to, explain the difference between JPEG and RAW to you. As you know, the RAW, when your camera captures a RAW image, it packages it up in probably a DNG is one example, or with Canon, it's CR2, or with Nikon, it's NEF, and it hands you that file. It is not a picture. A RAW file is not a picture. Technically, you can't see it. Well, you say, oh yeah, I see it on my camera, on the back of my camera. No, you're looking at a JPEG, okay, preview that the camera made from the RAW file with the settings that you have applied, you told it to apply, or maybe you don't even know. It is applying through the picture styles. So if you're shooting RAW and you don't like the way the picture looks on the back of your camera, go to in the settings and go to picture styles, and you can change it from portrait to landscape to you can change the amount of saturation, the color tones, all that kind of stuff in picture tone. But that does not affect the data in the RAW file. That's only affecting the small preview that you're looking at. So when you bring in, let's say you bring your images in from your phone then to Lightroom Classic like I do. Well, again, when you see the image, you're looking at a JPEG copy, okay, that estimates what that image would look like. You're not looking at the actual RAW file. So your phone camera, the native camera that comes with the iPhone does not shoot regular RAW files. Well, that says RAW right there. It says Apple ProRAW. Yes, but there's a caveat. Yes, the files you get from that are DNGs, which is a type of RAW file. But, and here's the big but, the camera adds mucho processing to that file to make it hopefully look better it adds it to the RAW file. So it's a RAW file that's been somewhat processed. Now, when you take it into an app to process it, then if you take it into the Photos app in your phone or iPad, or you take it into the Lightroom app on your phone or your iPad, or you take it into Lightroom Classic on your desktop, some of those things you can change because it is a RAW file. But the one thing you can't change, okay, is the noise reduction, which is applied heavily in low light situations. So if you take a shot in a low light situation and you have the Apple ProRAW on, you can't control what the phone's going to do. Okay, it adds noise reduction. They call it night mode. Okay, it's the process. But it adds noise reduction and sometimes very heavy-handedly bakes it into that raw file. And that's what you're working with. When you see a DNG, there's some things you can change, but you won't be able to change the noise reduction. Now, well, I should add too that the Apple ProRAW is only available on the iPhone Pro models, okay? The Pro and the Pro Max, okay? Because it's only, well, it's because of the amount of processing that has to be done on that type of a file that the other phones don't have that capability. So Apple ProRAW is a raw format with extra processing, and it's only available on the Apple Pro models. Now, you won't see Apple ProRAW on a Samsung. You know, it's an Apple proprietary format. And if you want to learn more about the format, I have some more information on my handout that you'll get tomorrow. But some of this stuff you really have to dig. Apple doesn't like to come right out and say, well, you know, we're really heavy-handed on our noise reduction. It's not good for business. They instead tell you, oh, we'll give you great pictures in low light. Well, they might be great for the average, person, but you and I are photographers. So when you start looking at these pictures with a critical eye, you'll say, oh, that background doesn't look good. It looks like a painting. It's lost all its detail. Okay. Now, if you're okay with that, or if you're okay with the use you have for that image, like you're just posting on Facebook and not worried about it, fine. Okay, that's okay. If you're going to print it and put it up on your wall, you might be a little more concerned about that. How do we get around that? Well, I prefer to shoot in the regular RAW format. Well, yeah, but how do you do that? Well, you can't with the native camera. You have to install a different camera on your phone, like Lightroom. Lightroom Mobile, as it used to be called, can be downloaded to your iPad or your iPhone, and it has a library part to it. I was going to say module, they don't call it that. Has a library part to it, and it has the camera part to it. With the Lightroom camera, you can take regular RAW files. There is no processing applied to them. Even though you're shooting with the iPhone, there's no processing applied. They're regular DNG files, period. But if you're shooting with the native camera, you can't shoot regular RAW files. The best you can do is to shoot Apple ProRAW. Okay, so you have to weigh the pros and cons of what you get with Apple ProRAW and decide whether you want to go that route. But again, you can only do that if you have a Pro model. Now, there's one other caveat that goes along with that. Some of you may have heard that you can shoot in 48 megapixel, you get 48 megapixel images from your iPhone. Well, you can, okay, but only under certain conditions. Again, it has to be a Pro model because you have to be able to shoot an Apple ProRAW, and you go in here and you tap on 48 megapixels. Well, yes, there is, and I'll talk about the different cameras that are available, but only the main camera, what they call the 1X camera, okay, can shoot at 48 megapixels. It actually has a sensor that's 48 megapixels, and you can take advantage of that by doing this. So if you don't mind those really, really big files that come along with it, and you want that because you want that high resolution, let's say you're doing an image that you want to print, especially large, okay, boom, this may be just what you want. But that 48 megapixel sensor by default goes to it outputs as a 12 megapixel image because they figure most people don't want to shoot 48 megapixels. The files are just too big. Okay, but if you say yes, I do, then you go into the settings right here and you change it to 48 megapixels. Now, there are a couple of really interesting things I found out, and one of them is, that the Apple camera doesn't tell you sometimes what it's doing, and that's by default. I mean, the engineers designed it this way. So let's say I did want to shoot 48 megapixels and I go in there and I go to the camera, and I'll demonstrate this in a minute. I'll use the main camera and I'll take an image, and okay, outside, boom, it says 48 megapixels. Then it starts to get a little dark and I don't change any of the settings and I take another picture, boom, it comes through as 12 megapixels. Wait a minute, what's going on? Well, when the light level gets at a certain low level, low, the camera automatically switches and it won't shoot 48 megapixels anymore. Okay, because it's adding that processing, that what they call night mode, with that extra noise reduction added to the DNG raw file. And without knowing it, you thought you were shooting a 48 megapixels, boom, you're only shooting at 12. Okay, so there we go. There we go. Those are the formats. Oh boy. Now I'm not going to talk about video. That would keep us here for a couple of days. So we're just going to run down the settings here, and I'm going down to preserve settings. Okay, right there. Now here's the theory. Preserve settings is just a convenience thing, a setting. So like camera mode, if I turn that on, just tap it. Supposedly, when I'm using the camera now, and the different camera modes are photo, video, portrait, slow-mo, cinematic. Supposedly, whatever setting I have when I exit the camera, let's say it's on video, and I close out the camera. When I open it back up again, it should open on that same setting, video. If it was on video when I closed, it would open on video when I closed. That preserved the setting. If I turn it off, supposedly, if I'm on video and I close the camera, when I open it back up again, it's going to open to the photo mode. Hey, that's what I want, because I hardly ever shoot video, but I might shoot slow-mo or one of those, on a special occasion. But I always wanted to shoot and open up in photo because that's pretty much what I use. So I would leave this turned off. Well, I'm not sure what's up. I posted a couple this question on a couple of Facebook groups, but when I tested this the other day, it didn't matter whether I had this turned on or off. I would go into the camera and have it on video, and I'd close the app, and then I'd have it on photo and I'd close the app. Every time the camera opened on the same mode it was on when it closed, which was telling me it was always preserving the setting, whether I told it to or not. So I wouldn't worry too much about this. I'm done with that. But you go down through those, and each one of those supposedly control, whether it's going to open up in that same setting or not. It's not a big deal. It's just a convenience thing. If it doesn't open up in photo and opens up in video instead, you just tap photo and you're on your way. Okay, so that's preserve settings. Here's a cool one, and I don't know if this is on your phone or not. Use volume up for burst. With some cameras, if you want the burst mode, you just hold your finger down on the shutter button and it's in burst mode. Well, I'll show you how this phone works with burst mode. That's not how it works. But a convenient way to do burst mode is with the button on the side of the camera, on the left-hand side, as it's facing me. If I just hold down that volume button, it's going to take multiple pictures at a rate of 10 pictures per second. That's the burst mode rate, okay, with this camera. So I think that's a convenient thing. I activated it. I'm leaving it on. Grid. You're all familiar with the rule of thirds. Well, if you have that on, then when you have the camera open, you'll see the thin grid lines. It helps you with composition, I think. I like that. Mirror front camera. If you are using the selfie camera, the front camera, and you have a shirt that says Penn State, when you're looking at the picture, it normally would be backwards, okay, the writing. So what you do is you can turn that on, and then it flips it around, and you can read Penn State. How we doing? Love that show. Oh, nobody has any questions in chat yet. Okay. View outside the frame. This is weird. I think the engineers were just getting a little wacko on this one. Let me show you what this does. Okay, let me go to the camera. Just gonna tap the camera. And, oh, I'm going to turn that off. Okay, go back to settings, turn that off. Yeah, outside the frame. Okay, no, I want that one. Okay, let's go back to the camera here a second. And that's me in my studio right there. Okay, and notice that you can't see anything. The image, you see a normal image. It's not extending beyond. So let me go back here to settings once and turn that off. Let's see what happens. Go back to camera. Photo. Well, you know what, for some reason that's not working. What it normally would do would be you could see extra. Think about this a minute. I was thinking you'd be able to see extra image on the sides where the dark part is on the left and the right. And the idea was that it would show you what you were missing, if that makes any sense. It would show you what you could get if you use the widest angle. Okay, the 0.5 down here, if I use that. Well, I think that's just distracting. So if I don't want to see that extra stuff because it's not going to show up in my picture. Yeah, to be quite honest, I'm not sure why that wasn't showing up. Off, on, let me go back to that one more time. Back to the camera. So if I had it on one, oh yeah, there we go. There we go. Now it's working. You see on the left and the right where the grayed out areas are, that's not part of the picture. You see the plug down here on the right and the stuff on the left. I can see things that aren't going to be included in the picture. That's what that does. And to me, that's just distracting because it's not going to be included. That's if I'm at the 1X camera. If I tap and go to the 2X camera, then it shows me what I'm missing. If I go to the ultra wide camera, then I don't see anything out there because that's as wide as I'll get. I can't get with this phone. I can't get any wider than that. But that's what we're talking about, that extra part that shows up out there. Okay. All right, let me go back to settings here. Okay, how are we doing, guys? Everybody hanging in there so far? A lot to go yet?
Yep, we're doing
All
good here,
right.
Dennis.
Okay, super. Photographic styles, that you can give your images a specific look, and we'll get into where you can turn that on and off when you take the picture. Prioritize faster shooting is interesting. I told you that the phone adds all this, does all this extra stuff, does this processing you don't even know about. Well, if you're shooting, like trying to shoot in burst mode or take rapid succession of pictures as you do in burst mode, then you might want to turn this on because it minimizes some of that processing, but you don't know what it's not doing. What's it minimizing? Well, I don't know. It's not doing something, so it can do it faster. That's crazy. But the quality of the images, from what I've read, if you turn that on, then the iPhone doesn't do as much processing in the images, and the general consensus is your images don't look as good. Okay, but if they're over processed anyway, you might give it a try, see what it does. Okay, but you have no way of knowing what it's not doing. Lens correction, you would generally leave that on just as you would in Lightroom Classic, just corrects for any distortion for the particular lenses. And this macro control, I'll show you macro in a bit. It's really cool on this phone, has a separate macro automatic function. And all this does is it shows the icon on the screen so that you know it's in macro mode. If I turn it off, it still goes into macro mode. You just don't see the icon. Well, I want to know when it's going in. I want to be able to see that. So I leave it on. Okay. So those are the basic settings on the camera. So let me do a new share and go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, and we'll continue on here. Okay. So there's what I just talked about. Burst mode. Yep. Okay. Now, this is interesting. some people say, oh, look on the back of your camera. You've got 3 or 4, 2 or 5, lenses. So they assume that each one is just a lens that goes to the same sensor. Okay, 5, 4 lenses, 1 sensor. No. This is, it's amazing. This shows you how how much they've miniaturized. The engineers have miniaturized things. Every one of those lenses on the front of your camera represents a complete camera with its own sensor. So as I was just showing there a minute ago, let's say you have a 0.5x, which is the ultra wide on this particular camera, and it has the equivalent focal length of 13 millimeters. Now, there's another confusing part that Apple doesn't make easy for us. Because the sensor is so small, we like to think in terms of, well, what if it were a 35 millimeter camera? What would it be equivalent to? So for convenience sake, that's what this is. They've done the math to say, oh, if you're shooting with that lens, it's like shooting with a 13 millimeter lens on a full frame camera. Okay. The 35 millimeter equivalent, as it says here. The sensor resolution is 12 megapixels. You don't have a choice. Okay. The aperture, now here's the confusing part. The aperture is listed as 2.2. That's not the 35 millimeter equivalent. And quite frankly, I have been unable, with all my research, unable to find a number for the most part that would be the 35 millimeter equivalent of the aperture. Now, whether you realize it or not, on your phone cameras, you can't change the aperture. It's fixed. Okay, you can't change it. So don't even think about it. It doesn't matter what phone manufacturer you have, all of them are the same. And you say, well, pardon me, that's how I get my limited depth of field. I open up the aperture to wide open. Can't do it that way with a phone, a phone camera. You have to simulate the effect some other way. And we'll show you that in a minute. Okay. And the only problem I have with the ultra wide camera is it tends to look distorted, especially on the edges. But it's improved since the 8 Plus that I had, much improved. All right. Now you go next to the 1X. The 1X is considered their main camera. That's what they call it, because that's the one that has the highest resolution. You can go to the 48 megapixel on that, as I explained, if you want to. It has the focal length equivalent of 24 millimeters, which most of us I consider to still be a rather wide angle lens. Okay. And look at its aperture. See, it's a smaller number, 1.78 as compared to 2.2. Now, I can't compare that to 35 millimeter. I don't know how that equates, but I can compare the one number to the other. And what it tells me is, that the aperture on the main camera is a little larger than the aperture on the ultra wide. So the main camera would be best to use in a low light situation. Well, guess what? Again, the camera automatically does things that you don't even know about. If you're using one of the other lenses, or one of the other cameras, I should say, and the light's getting pretty low, it's getting dark at night, it'll switch over to the main camera without telling you. And it'll even indicate, it still say, if you're on the 3X camera, it'll still say 3X. And you take the picture, and the only way I found out was when I went into Lightroom Classic, I was being very careful to scrutinize all the factors. And I said, I made a note that I took that with the 3X lens camera, but it showed up as being with the 1X because the phone automatically switched over to the camera that could handle the low light better. Didn't tell me. In fact, it misled me because it still said 3X. But indeed, it's a little larger aperture, so it does give you operate a little better in low light, and that's the one that's most used for general photography. Then you've got the 2X, which is not actually a camera by itself. This is misleading. The 2X zooms in. using the 1X camera system. It's a cropped version of the 1X. So my recommendation is don't use 2X, okay? Use 1X and then crop in post. That doesn't matter if you crop on the phone or on an iPad or on, the Lightroom Classic, whatever, wherever you crop, but you can have the same effect doing it in post. You don't have to worry about doing it in camera. It doesn't make any difference because 2X is a cropped version of the 1X scene, right? It's not a separate camera, even though it looks like it. You won't find the 2X, lens and camera on the lens on the back there or the front of the phone. 3X, yes, this is actually what they call a telephoto lens. And I swore I was going to wait until they actually had a true telephoto lens before I bought a new phone, but I broke down anyway. This has a 35 millimeter equivalent of 77 millimeters. Pardon me. Now that's not what I consider to be a true telephoto lens. A little bit, but not truly. Okay, but that's the best you can get, even with Apple's best phone. Now, one of the competitors of the Apple iPhone is Samsung. And if you happen to have a Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, oh my goodness, you have an actual optical zoom in there that has a telephoto equivalent, a 35 millimeter equivalent, pardon me, of 230 millimeters. 230 millimeters. How do they do that? Why can't Apple do that? Well, they'll figure it out, okay? But they haven't for some reason up to this point. But this is better. The 3X is good for portraits and zooming in a little bit. Your best bet for zooming in is actually walking up closer to subject. And you say, oh yeah, but I can change that. I can use my two fingers and I can spread them and I can zoom in to 10X or 15X. I don't recommend you do that. That's what we call digital zoom. You're cropping way in, you're taking that image and then you're just stretching it out, cropping way into it, and it's going to degrade your image. You could do the same thing by using the 3X and then cropping in post. Okay, don't zoom in digitally with your fingers or with that spinny little dial they have on the camera. Okay, just not a good thing to do. Okay, Jim is asking, what is the limit for true optical zoom on an iPhone? That's it, 77 millimeters. The Samsung S22, has a much better zoom. I'll get into Smart HDR in a minute. And Rod says, yep, he can go to 10X. Yes, you can. I don't recommend it. Okay, just shoot with the 3X and then crop in post. The other thing that happens when you zoom into 10X, and if you have ever done this, you'll know, you're trying to hold that camera steady and you can't, okay? So, and you'll get a blurry image just because of camera movement. But if you shoot at 3X, you'll be better off. You can hold the camera, you won't be able to hold the camera any steadier, but you'll be better off than cropping in. But you should keep in mind that if you intend to crop, then you should better hold that camera as steady as you can or support it in some way, like push it up against the wall or a post or set it on top of a garbage can or some other way that to support it. Tripod, monopod, even a selfie stick, helps to hold it steady. Okay. All right. Hey, this is fun stuff. A lot of interesting stuff, but a lot of stuff you don't know when you read the manual or you just go to the Apple website. Okay, there I talked about the 48 megapixels. Yep, it usually shoots. Oh, here are the other two cameras. Let's say you don't have a Pro Max. You have an iPhone 14. Well, guess what? You only have two cameras. You also have a selfie, but you only have the 13 millimeter and the 24 millimeter. You don't get the 77. And there's the Galaxy S22 Ultra, 4 cameras, 13, 23, 69, and 230. Let's go back to that a minute. The one thing I forgot to talk about was the selfie. The selfie, of course, Yeah, it's a 1X camera and the equivalent of a 23 millimeter, just a basic 12 megapixels. But so that means you have 4 separate cameras, not lenses, 4 separate cameras and 5 zoom options. All right. And yes, Chip says the 13 Pro does not have 48 megapixel option. And that's, that's probably too, I think that's something new with the 14. Because it has that new sensor, that main camera sensor. Okie dokie. Now, all cameras, whether they're DSLRs or mirrorless or phone cameras, have to have software because the software runs the show. Okay, the other stuff is the equipment, which just manages or lets the light through. So a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, we call it firmware. Okay, and you can, on some of those cameras, like especially with mirrorless, you can update your firmware every once in a while, which gives you additional features or corrects problems that exist. With most DSLRs, you can't do that. They don't give you the option of upgrading the firmware. Phone cameras, one of the really neat things is you have lots of options with the software. So with a phone camera, we don't call it firmware, we call it the camera app. And when I was showing you my iPhone, just a couple minutes ago, when I tapped on the camera, that was the native camera that comes with the phone. That's what I'm talking about tonight, for the most part. The camera that comes with the phone, I call it the native, well, it's called the native Apple camera app. Now, you can download from the App Store other camera apps. Oh, you can? Yeah, and I'll show you a list of them in a minute. You don't have to go with this one because other camera apps can do some things that the native camera app can't do. Okay, get to that more in a minute. So as photographers, we like control. That's one of the reasons we use our DSLRs and our mirrorless cameras. We like to be able to control the look of the picture through the use of the shutter speed, the lens aperture, and the ISO. Well, guess what? If you're using the native Apple camera, you can't change any of those. Well, what do you mean? Nope, you can't change them. They just happen. Well, why is that? Well, because the Apple engineers designed this camera for the convenience of non-photographers. Yes, it's easy to use, but you sacrifice control for convenience. It's easy, but I can't change a lot of things that I'm used to changing with my DSLR or my mirrorless camera. That is exactly why people go to the other cameras, download and install something like the Lightroom mobile app, camera app. Then you can shoot regular RAW files, not that Apple ProRAW, and you have control over the ISO and the shutter speed to some degree. Do I have control over the lens aperture? Nope, can't control that no matter what camera app you download. Okay, Magic. Apple uses Apple Magic. They don't call it that, but there are some things that I refer to them as Magic. It's called Smart HDR, Deep Fusion, and Night Mode are the processes that are used. And what is happening automatically many, many times when you take a picture, even though you don't realize it, the camera's taking multiple images. Boom, 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 very quickly, multiple images. Well, why? Well, hopefully to try to give you a better picture. It composites those, it aligns them and composites them into one image, and that's all you ever see. Now, in the older iPhone models, you could go into settings and you had an option if you wanted to save the individual files that it was making, like when you did HDR, you could, and then you could look at it like we do with our regular cameras. Now, like this camera, okay, the 14 Pro Max, you can't do that any longer. It doesn't give you that option because, oh, that's too much control. Let's just automate things. Okay, that's their goal. Automate it, make it, push of the button, you got your picture, that's it. If you're not happy with it, yeah, that's too bad. Okay, so the iPhone automatically composites multiple images many times without you knowing it, oftentimes, and it applies technology called Smart HDR, and we all know what HDR is. Well, Apple made it even smarter. How'd they do that? Nobody knows, but they call it smart HDR. And you have no control over it. If the camera senses that there's a lot of contrast in the scene, boom, it automatically shoots them 3 pictures and composites them together. Change, different exposures as we're used to, same process, but boom, without you knowing it. Deep fusion, that's magic I don't even know about. That does stuff. It's supposed to make the picture look better. What it does, nobody knows, except the engineers. Night mode, there's another magic. When it gets dark out, it automatically kicks in. Do you have any control over it? Yeah, not much. And supposedly gives you better images, okay? But you don't have much control over those processes. So I hope you're getting the feeling here that you sacrifice control for convenience. And if that's what you want, if convenience is your goal, boom, there you go. If you still want to use your phone, but you want a little more control, download a different app. Don't use the native app. Okay, let's look at the way it does some tricks. I mentioned this briefly before. If you want that blurry effect like we get with long exposure on your DSLR or your mirrorless, you would set it, you put it on a tripod and set it to 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 5 minutes, an hour, whatever. The shutter stays open that long. And not on a phone camera. As much as I've been able to read, there is no phone camera that keeps the shutter open for more than 1 second. Okay. Well, now let me revise that. No, I think that's what I read. Yeah, 1 second. Even if you use camera apps like long exposure or time exposure, or whatever they call them, it takes multiple pictures. Okay, and then it simulates the look of a long exposure, but through multiple pictures, but it just doesn't look the same. I did some comparisons, and if we have time, I can show you later. But when it takes multiple pictures and composites them, what you see are, you can actually make out the different images. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. Can't do that when you use a long exposure with your DSLR or your mirrorless, then you just get nice, smooth flowing water. I did some trucks. I live near Route 15, and I watched the traffic go by the other night, and I experimented with this with my iPhone. And a truck went by, and I'm taking long exposure with the native app and with the long exposure app. And in both cases, boom, 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 the image was choppy. You could see the outline of the truck on each one of the individual images. You did not get a smooth, long exposure effect like we're used to. I'm going to wait to show you live photo when we get to the actual use of the camera, but live photo, again, takes multiple pictures and allows you to simulate a long exposure. Same way with limited depth of field to blur the background. Okay, we're used to using a telephoto lens and opening the aperture as far as it'll go. Phone camera, you can't change the aperture, so you're stuck. It does it digitally. And it does it in well, I'll explain portrait mode, how that works in a minute with the iPhone. But that's the way to get that out of focus background with an iPhone, is you shoot in portrait mode. Okay, I mentioned this at the beginning, but when your iPhone operates, when Apple or your company updates the operating system for your phone, lots of things can change. Okay, so it's good to get in there and find out what those changes are, and that includes the cameras. Okay, they can change. How many gigabytes of storage do I have on my 14 Pro Max? You can buy them with different amounts, clear up to 1 terabyte. Okay, I have 512 gigabytes. Now, that's a lot more than I need, even if I go on a trip. Why is that? Oh, I don't store my pictures on my phone. Ooh. When I take pictures on my phone, no matter which camera I use, they're automatically uploaded to the Adobe Cloud and automatically downloaded to my desktop and automatically imported into Lightroom Classic. When that happens, I back them up there, and that's where my photos reside. Then I delete them from my iPhone. Ooh, I know a lot of you are wincing on that, but that suits my style. My wife has every picture she's taken in the last 15 years on her iPhone. So she can go, but when we're traveling or visiting with friends, she can go back and say, oh, look, there's Brennan when he was 10 years old. I can't. Okay, but instead, I have all my pictures in one place and now I have plenty of space, on my phone. Okay. Okay, we're going to continue on here and then, okay, I talked about other apps. Well, what are some of those? Lightroom Mobile, I mentioned. There's one that gets a lot of good hype out on Facebook. It's called Halide, and it also allows you, Lightroom and Halide, Camera Plus, ProCam, they allow you to shoot true RAW files, not those Apple ProRAWs that are processed, but true RAW files. And some of these allow you to do some other things. Slow shutter is supposed to give you a long exposure look, but I tried it the other day and it even gave me that repetitive look from taking multiple images and combining them. Even longer is supposed to do the same thing. Okay, so yeah, these are the things that some of these cameras will allow you to do. In the Lightroom, well, you can adjust the shutter speed to a certain amount, up to like about 1 second, and then after that it starts taking multiple pictures. And one thing I found difficult to control is on our regular cameras, we want to keep the ISO as low as possible to maintain image quality. And if you don't watch that on your phone camera, even if you're in good light, if you look at the metadata, you might find that your camera just shot that image at 1/4,000th of a second. Okay, and the ISO was up to 4,000. Well, why? What sense did that make? It didn't have to do that. Okay, you could shoot at a lower shutter speed, a longer shutter speed, and then use a lower ISO. And it does try to do that. So most of the time that's not a problem. But keep an eye on your ISO. Yeah, it's not always easy to do. And it's not easy, it's not possible if you use the native app. You want to go to another camera app. RAW format, as I mentioned, and realistic looks on the long exposure can be somewhat better with some of these cameras, but still they're limited. Okay, now let's get to the nitty gritty since we're running out of time here. You want to be able to access your phone quickly from your camera quickly from your phone. And the iPhone 14 Pro Max has a couple neat ways to do that. I'll show you this in a minute, but when the phone is locked, okay, it's locked. There is a camera app, a little small camera app, and I'll show you in a minute, on the screen. I can push and hold that, and it'll open the camera without unlocking the phone. It's a quick way to get to it. Or while the phone is still locked, I can swipe from right to left, and it opens the camera. Now, when I go to close it, I can't access my other apps until I unlock the phone. The phone is still locked, but because the engineers know that you want to be able to access your phone, even if it's locked, quickly. So here are ways that you can do that. Or on this phone, I can touch the upper right corner and swipe down and get to the control center, and the camera icon is there. I can tap on it and open it. Or here's a unique one on this phone. If you have it set in the settings, you can double tap on the back of the camera, back of the phone, and the camera opens. That's pretty cool, but you have to turn that option on in the settings, as I have indicated there. Now, if your phone is already unlocked, you can do what you usually do. Number one is just go to the camera app. Okay, the icon for the camera, and tap it, it opens up. Now, what I would recommend, if you shoot a lot with your phone, put it someplace where it's easy to find, like in the docking station at the bottom, where you can have 4 of your most commonly used apps. Just push and hold on the one of the icons until they start jittering, and indicate that you want to edit the home screen, and just drag it down, to the docking area. Then you always know where it is. Okay, it's easy to do. And here's one that I don't use much, but I thought it was cute. I can use Siri to open my camera. Okay, if you have Siri turned on, and if you have the phone unlocked. Now it's already unlocked. So I'm not sure why you would bother to do that. You could just tap the icon if it's unlocked. But nonetheless, if you like Siri and your friends, you can go ahead and use her. Okay, so let me switch over to the camera app, and I need to do a new share here to switch back to the camera. Promise to speed things along here. How are we doing? I miss Starburst, Chuck says. Yes, you won't be able to get a good Starburst with your phone camera because you can't change the aperture. You know, and you get the Starburst by using a small aperture and shooting toward the sun. Well, sorry, you just can't do that with an iPhone. You have to simulate it somehow. Okay, so let's first of all, let me see if I can do this. Let me close the camera. Okay, everything's closed. I'm gonna hit the button on the right hand. Oh, this won't work for you. You won't be able to see this because it always shows you. Yeah, my camera just went dark. Tap it. Oh, there we go. Look at the little icon in the bottom right. I push and let go. Ta-da! There's my camera. There's my camera. Now it's still locked. Okay, I can't close that out and get to any other apps. It's still locked. But there's my home screen, and that little camera icon on the bottom right. I just push and hold that, and then let go. As soon as I boom, let go, the camera's open. That's pretty cool. Okay, or I can swipe down from the upper right, and there's my control center, and then you see the camera app right there. If I tap on that camera app, it's in the lower right. Tap on that, the camera opens up, but the phone's still locked. Okay, or what was the other one? The other one was, make sure it's closed out. The other one was swipe if it's still locked. Okay, so there it's still locked. I swipe from right to left. This is real easy, but I don't have to do that actually, since that little icon's down there. There's the icon, but I could also, I'm swiping with my finger from the far right to the far left, swipe, and that didn't work. Sorry. Swipe, and there's the camera. So a couple quick ways to access your camera. And now the camera app is open. This is the Apple native camera. And what we want to look at first are the camera modes at the bottom. Now, I'm not going to get into each one of these, but we want to focus on the photo mode. So there's time lapse. That's where it would take a series of pictures over a length of time and then put them into a video that makes it look like it's going very quickly. Or you can do just the opposite. You can put it on slow-mo, and then it'll take a very fast video and then play it back very slowly, okay, to make the action go slowly. Cinematic, something new, and it's cinematic video, which allows you to give a professional look to your video by being able to change the focus point and the depth of field. So if you have two people in the frame and one's farther away and one's closer, you can do like you see in the movies. You can have it change focus, okay, to go from one to the other. Video, you know what that is, and I can't spend time on that. Photo, we'll get back to in a minute here. That's the one we use most of the time. Portrait is the one, if you're taking somebody's portrait, you can use this one to give you that blurry background. See if I can demonstrate that. And it'll tell you have to be at a certain distance. And what it does in portrait mode, it takes two pictures, one with the ultra wide camera and one with the main camera, and it blurs the background of the ultra wide image and masks your subject and puts it doesn't blur that one, of course, and it masks that. And what happens a lot of times is the mask, if you have somebody with hair, like a woman with fluffy hair, especially, the masking isn't perfect and it doesn't look quite right. You can see through it, but then it does allow you to change the amount of blur, not only before you take the picture, but after you take the picture, you can change it in post. This is done through what they call a depth map that goes along with the image because it's shot in the HEIC format. So you can add, it includes more information. So if I'm here, well, there's my chapstick, there's my glass of water. Let's see if I can use that. Notice, let's see, I'm in portrait mode. I'm gonna try to see if I get too close. That's not seeing. You have to be a certain distance away. I think that'll work. See me in the background, I look pretty blurry. And then If I wanted to, I can change the lighting effect, like on this little thing that goes around here. But that's awkward when you're taking the picture. So you don't have to do it now. You can do it in post. So just wait if you want to change the lighting situation. But say the glass is my person and I take the picture, okay, and then I tap the thumbnail down there to look at it. And you see up in the upper left-hand corner, it says portrait mode. Oh, cool. So that did shoot in portrait mode. And you see I'm fairly blurry in the background. Okay. But if I go to edit, okay, up in the upper left, you see the yellow octagon? That tells you it was shot in portrait mode. So does that yellow block in the upper middle. Tells you it was shot in, it's yellow portrait, was shot in portrait mode. But look at the little block to the left, the oval, it says f4.5. You tap on that. Oh, now over on the right-hand side, I have a scale. Now watch, that's my depth map scale, my blurriness of the background. You see when I move that, how much I blurred? This is in post. It's already, I've already taken the picture. I just got blurred myself out of the picture, or I could make myself sharper. Oh, ain't that pretty cool? Change the amount of blur on the background in post if you shoot in portrait mode. Now, you can't be too close or too far away from your subject, and it takes two pictures, combines the two. And the mask here looks pretty good. You know, I don't see any problems with that. Okay, portrait mode only works with, nope. Portrait mode only works with a human face. No, that's not true. I've tested that because I heard that before. And as you can see from this glass of water, it's not a person's face, but the portrait mode did still work. It's just a matter of the distance away. So even though it's portrait mode, it's not, it doesn't depend on a face. Okay. Cool, cool. So let's see, let's go back to my camera there. Okay, so on Pano, I won't get into that. You know what Pano is, but here's my little trick for doing Panos. You know how you use Panos and you go from one side to the other side. Well, if you decide that instead of starting on the left, you want to start on the right, all you have to do is tap the arrow. Boom. And now you can start from the right and go to the left. It doesn't matter which way you go. But let's say I do my Pano, and when you get the whole way around, okay, typically people will just stop, or you might hit the button again. You might hit the shutter button. Don't do that because it shakes the camera. All you have to do is reverse direction. Okay, watch this. Take my Pano, and I just want to twirl it around like that. So ready, set, go. Hit the shutter button, take it around, stop, go backwards. It automatically stopped. Okay, now here's my Pano. Oh, that's not bad. Pretty cool, and I did that really rough. Okay, so I didn't hit the button. Okay, I didn't hit the shutter button to stop it. I had to do that to start it, but I just hit the shutter button to stop it. I didn't. I just reversed the direction of the phone. Okie dokie. Okay, let's get back now to the photo mode. That's why we came. Let's see. Oh, that's still in Pano. Okay. And here's one thing that really bugs me. It is so easy to bump your hand against your phone and change the mode. Like I'm shooting in photo, okay? And all of a sudden at Pine Grove Furnace, I'm doing videos. No, I don't want to do a video. So I wish there was some way to lock it in, but there's not. Okay. All right. And of course, the other things you have here are, well, let's look at the photo mode. If I look up at the top, up in the left, I have a little circle with looks like a lightning bolt with an arrow through it, or a line through it. That's the flash. Okay, I turn it on, the line or tap it, the line disappears, and now my flash is on. Tap it again, my flash is off. I'm shooting in Apple Pro RAW. See up there, it says RAW. Well, I have that on as an option, I should say. If it's off because there's a line through it. So if I tap, now I'm shooting in Apple Pro RAW. I don't have the 48 megapixel option selected. I'm just doing 12 megapixels, but nonetheless, it's going to be a RAW file, Apple Pro RAW. Okay. And this little baby right here, the concentric circles with the line through it, that's live photo. Let's try live photo. Okay. So I tap it. Oh, see the way it goes? It oscillates. And for a moment there, live came up in yellow. Live went off. Watch. and that yellow block will come up. What it's trying to do is to alert you that, and this happens accidentally too. There are many times I've shot live photo and I didn't intend to. But when I tap it, it says live, 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 you're shooting it live. Okay, I'm in live. So let's say I want to shoot live. Live is actually a 3-second video clip. What? Yes, it shoots in HEIC format, which allows it to do a video clip. Now, it takes, this is strange, and it's highly complex. It takes one image, like a still image, real sharp, and then it takes a video. And the one image that's real sharp is called the key image, and you can use that as the one main image if you want, or you can use, the 3-second video. But here's something that's even stranger. The camera senses your hand approaching the shutter button and starts the video before you touch the button. What? Yes, it's true. So when you're shooting in live photo, you want to make sure you're holding the camera steady and stop talking before you hit the button, because the video includes audio. Right? So you take a photo. Now, if it's something still, like, you won't notice a difference. Oh, I just took a picture. Yeah, it said live up there. Now I'll tap the little thumbnail down the lower left-hand corner to review my picture, and it comes up. And look up in the upper left where it says live. That tells me this photo was taken as a live photo. Well, because there was nothing moving, I can't see any difference. Okay, but watch this. Okay, I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to move the camera. I'm going to be jittery. So, okay, ready, set, go. Oh, move. Oh, I wasn't holding it very steady. Okay, let's see what happened. It's a live photo. Hey, it looks fine. Yes, it's showing you the key frame, but watch this. I take my index finger and I push on the screen, and I just hold my finger there. There's the 3-second video. You can hear me and you can see it moving from the video. Yeah. And it does. It anticipates your hand moving toward the shutter button, moving toward the phone, and it starts the video before you actually push the button. It anticipates it. Now, here's what's really cool. This is what I like about live video. That was stupid, but this is what I like. If you go up here, it gives you options. Look at this: live, loop, bounce, long exposure, or off. Okay, let's go to off. Now I push on it. I'm pushing my fingers on it. Nothing's happening. I turned it up. I moved. I turned it off. Okay, let's go to, well, live. I showed you the movement. Let's go to loop. Oh, now it says loop up in the upper left-hand corner. Watch this. I push it. Oh, it's already doing it. I don't have to push on it. See, it's continuing. It loops that 3-second video over and over again. Okay, let's go to bounce. Now, now it goes back and forth. Pardon me. And this is all simulated because it's on multiple images. A video is nothing but many, many images right after one another. So the multiple images combined, it's a video. Now, long exposure, let's see what this does. Ooh, it blurred it. It blurred it. Okay, so that was a kind of a silly example. Let me give you something that's a little more practical. Let me go to some shots that I did at Hershey Park. Here's the claw, and you see up here, I'll put it on live. Okay, up in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to push my finger. Ready, set, go. There's the 3-second video clip as live. Okay, let's try it as a loop. Okay, I don't hear the audio there, but it's just continuing to loop over and over. Repeats the 3-second video. How about bounce? Just goes back and forth. Boom, boom. How about long exposure? Oh, this is what I would really look forward to. Let's see what that does. It blur. Oh, it blurs it nicely. But if you look closely, you can see the delineations of the multiple images. It doesn't give you the smooth look you would get from your regular, DSLR or, pardon me, or mirrorless camera. Where's one? Oh, here's the one I like. Yeah, this is the steamboat type of thing. push on the image. This is down Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I do a loop. Just continue, it loops the 3-second video. See, it's pretty smooth. You can't tell it's just a 3-second video. It looks like it's continuous. And you go to bounce, and that's silly. It just goes back and forth. Yeah, don't use that much. And long exposure. Ooh, look at that. Pardon me. The problem is you can't control the long exposure. Let's say, well, I don't want that much blur. I'll take another picture. Sorry, that's what you get. The amount of blur you get simply depends on how fast the moving object is moving. You can't control it. Okay, like you could in a DSLR or your mirrorless, you could just change the shutter speed. Okay, can't do that. Okay, on this, and it's all doing it by taking multiple pictures. Okay, guys, here we go. That's okay. That's the stuff across the top, as you can see, flash, raw or no or not, and live. And so often live has been turned on by mistake. Again, I wish there were a way to lock it. Well, you can go in settings and turn live photo off totally, but then I wouldn't have access. It would take me forever if I wanted a live photo to go into settings and change that. So you just have to be careful. So I tap it again, so it's off. Of course, a 3-second video plus a still, that's an audio, that's it all packaged together in that HEIC format, that file format. That's taking up quite a bit more space, okay, than just a single photo. So you don't want to shoot live photos unless you want to shoot live photos. Don't do it by mistake. Now, those are the ones that are used, those features are used pretty frequently. So they're put at the top for quick access. But you have a few other features that you can use. See the little caret in the middle of the screen at the top? Okay, I'm going to tap on that little caret. Ready? Boom. Oh, look at the bottom right above the shutter button. Now I've got flash again. Okay, on here it gives me the options. I can turn it off altogether, okay, which it was, on or auto. And I recommend you turn it off because it's just annoying and it doesn't do anything unless you're more than about 2 feet or closer to your subject. There's live photo again, and there's no difference between that and the one up top that I showed you up in the upper right-hand corner. Up top, they're just quick access, okay? And then I have this one, the squares, and that just, changes your, whoops, let's open that back up again. What does that do? Standard. It's putting some filters over the scene. So there I've got warm, cool. There's no need to do that before capture. If you want to add, something like that, a filter to your image, do it in post, okay? Because what will happen is you'll change it to vibrant, and then you'll forget about it, and every picture you take will be vibrant. Okay, so I just leave it on standard, and then you can change it in post if you want. Okay, so where were we? I was down here. Oh, the next one, 4.3. That's your aspect ratio. There's 16.9, so it's going to be more like your TV wide format and square. And my recommendation, well, see, if you change from the standard, okay, 4.4:3 is the standard, and if you go to something else like 16:9, it's still going to shoot the image as a 4:3, and it crops it for you. Okay, like a 1:1, let's say it's a square. Okay, so I go over here to square. You see a square, but it actually takes the image as a complete image, a full frame, from the sensor, and crops it for you. So I would leave it at 4:3. Okay, so you're always looking at the whole image, and then if you want to crop it in post to a different aspect ratio, you certainly can do that. Okay, next one. You don't have control over the shutter speed, but you do have control over the overall exposure. So if you want to brighten or darken the image, you can do it there, but I'll show you a better way in a minute. Okay, so I would leave that at 0. And then of course you have a timer, 3 or 10 seconds. So if you have it on a tripod, and you want to get in the image, or you're holding it steady for some reason, you can use the timer. So that's how you access the little caret at the top, touch that little caret, tap it, and it opens and closes those options for you at the bottom. All right. Oh, and then of course, as I mentioned, in the lower left-hand corner, you have that little thumbnail that doesn't show you much of anything, but when you tap on it, then it brings your image up. And then if you want to go into the Photos editing app, you just tap on edit at the bottom there, and it takes you right into the Photos app. And then you can crop it and change filter and do all those kind of things, to your image. Or you could use it, you could open it in a different app, a processing app, editing app. Okay, like Snapseed is one of the ones used most widely around the world. Snapseed can allow you to do almost anything you can do in Lightroom Mobile. Okay, so I think, I almost forgot the selfie camera. The little double-headed arrow in the lower right corner turns it around, and that's your selfie camera. Okay, and that's using the main camera. And I don't have anything. Let's see, something with writing on it. Can you read that writing? No, see, the writing looks backwards, but if I go in and change that setting that I showed you earlier, then it would look the right way. Okay, let's go back to, let's close that out for now, I think. Okay, how are we doing? Well, I'm going to try to speed things up here. Got a few things I want to cover before we close up. Photo. Okay, let's talk about actually taking a picture. What a lot of people just hold the camera up. Let's do my water glass here again. And they just hold the camera up and take the picture. Well, that's probably not the best way to do things. The camera is usually pretty good at picking out your subject, but maybe not, just like with a DSLR or mirrorless, maybe not what the camera thinks. It might be trying to outguess you. So the best thing to do is, once you get your composition, tap on your subject. And that sets the focus and the exposure. Okay, so you see the square come up, the yellow square with the little sun beside it. So that's exposure. Or let me show you. Let me tap on my, see, it recognized my face. If I tap on me, it just jumped focus. See, I came into focus, glass. There we go. That's pretty good to demonstrate that. So pick your focus point. And we like to do that sometimes with our regular cameras, have something blurry in the background, focus on something far away, because the camera itself never would have guessed that I wanted to focus on me back there. Okay, so let's go back here. And then the other thing to do, remember I said you could use that slider to change the overall focus. Well, here's the easier thing to do. Press your finger against the phone and slide it up. Tap, slide it up. Oh yeah, there we go. Up to brighten the image, or down to darken the image. Now, it doesn't matter which way you have the phone oriented. Let's see, I tap it. Now I have it horizontally. I can still slide up, slide down. So no matter which way you have the phone oriented, you press and slide up to increase the exposure, down to decrease the exposure. And what you want to do most commonly is decrease the exposure a little bit, because phone cameras have a tendency to overexpose the highlights. Okay, so you can always bring the exposure up a little bit, in post. So tap to focus and exposure, slide up, slide down. Now, if you want to take the picture, of course, boom, you can tap the shutter button, do so lightly, so you're not jarring the camera, jarring the phone, because it might be taking multiple images. You don't know. Okay, it might be taking multiple images. It does, a lot of times, and it doesn't warn you about that. So you take if I push and hold the shutter button on this camera, it starts a video. Okay, it automatically switches to video. It doesn't tell you, but see the button turned red? Well, it's playing a video. Okay, which I could play back there. Okay, there's the video. Okay, if you push and hold. Now you have to check out your particular model of camera, because this operates different ways. if I want to lock in the video, I don't want to have to hold the button, but yeah, I decided, oh, I do want to take a video. I push and slide to the right. Now it's taking a video. See the red blocks on? Stop it, tap it to stop it, push and slide to the right. If I want to do burst mode, the old way to do burst mode was just to hold the button. No, with the new cameras, you hold and slide to the left. Ready? Go. Slide to, oh my goodness. It just took about 15 or 20 pictures. Okay, slide, move and slide to the left is the burst mode. Or, oh, I remember in settings, I had it set that if I push the volume, the top volume button, the volume up button, I can take a burst mode. So let's try that. I got my thumb on the volume button. Nope, that's not working. Wonder why. Let's go back and check that. I'll show you where that was. Go back to camera. Okay, burst volume up for burst. Yeah, it's set there. Okay, come on, camera. Okay, ready, set. Unless it's taking without the sound. Let me try that one more time. Then we'll move on here. Try that on. Do something else, like there's the floor. Oh, there it took. Oh, there it goes. Okay, it's working now. Yeah, just had to, I have a case on this, and I think the case was a little bit in the way. But yep, hold the volume button down, and boom, you've got it. What else? Oh, yeah, let me switch back to, we'll wind things up by going back to the PowerPoint presentation just for a couple of minutes. Hang in there if you will, guys. I know it's 8:32. Let me new share. And yeah, I'll ignore the chat for now, and I'll respond to your questions. If it's something I think is pertinent to a lot of people, then I'll put it in the follow-up email tomorrow. Okay, so let's be moving on here. Went over that, over that. The modes, facing, yeah. Oh, I didn't show you macro. Yeah, I didn't show, oh, darn. Okay, you saw me at one time. I used the different cameras. You know, you can just tap on it 0.5, 1, 2, or 3 to get your zoom effect. and macro is specific to this particular camera, so I won't go into that at this point, but it's cool. It's automatic. If you bring the camera close to a subject, it automatically goes into macro mode, which is pretty darn good. I took the dandelion picture you saw on the spider web, and I've taken a lot of macro shots, you know, with this camera, and it really works nicely. Okay, yeah, explained that stuff. Tab, hold the focus. Oh, zooming in. Yeah, I told you earlier about not zooming in with your fingers. Oh, the other ways to take your picture. The shutter button, yes. Okay, that's the most common. The volume button on the side, in the volume down button could be used to just take a single picture, and the volume up button to do a burst mode. But if you have your headphones on, like if these headphones were, earbuds, I should say, were connected to the phone, okay, I could just press the volume control button to take a picture. That's really cool if you're doing street photography and you're standing on the curb and people don't even know that you're taking pictures. They think you're watching a video, and boom, you just push, they think you're turning the volume up on the video and you're taking pictures. Very cool. Or you could use a Bluetooth remote shutter release. They're very convenient. If you buy a selfie stick, which I have, it'll come with one. You pair it with Bluetooth, and then I don't use the selfie stick for selfies, trust me. Well, not very often. But I use it to hold the camera steady. And then I can extend the selfie stick to put the camera in unique perspective, unique places, in certain places for unique perspective, I should say. And then when the camera's far away, I just use the button on the side of the selfie stick to control the shutter release. And when Diane Parisi gets her Apple Watch, then she'll be able to control her iPhone camera with the Apple Watch also. All right, coming toward the end here, guys. Some concerns I have about all phone cameras, not just Apple. I think they're awkward to hold. Maybe you don't, but they're difficult to hold steady, especially. And that's why I like some kind of support, like a selfie stick, or I have a tripod that I use. You know, yeah, if you went to the Pine Grove Furnace field trip, you saw me I had my iPhone on a small tripod at that point. All of these phones are susceptible to flare. You do want to clean the lenses occasionally because that just increases the possibility of flare. They don't have lens hoods. Okay. Pictures taken in low light tend to look over processed, as I mentioned earlier, like the background was painted. In bright light, the screen's difficult to see. This is on all phones. Okay. So you can, try to shade them. The new iPhone 14 has a brighter screen than earlier models. So that's supposed to help with that a little bit. As I mentioned, it's very easy to accidentally change the settings, like going from photo to video. Okay. And the long exposure effects don't look realistic. Okay. They look, choppy instead of smooth, the way you would get with your long exposures on your DSLR or mirrorless. Okay, and specifically this camera, the native camera in the iPhone, I get frustrated because I can't control the shutter speed, the aperture, and the ISO, and that's why I tend to use the Lightroom camera. Okay, or one of the other ones that I mentioned you could use. That'll let you shoot RAW, and it'll let you control the shutter speed and the ISO to some degree. Remember though, no matter what camera you have on your phone, you can't control the aperture. Just can't do it. And the long exposure effect, the only way to do it on this camera is with live photo. So I do tend to shoot most of the time with the Lightroom camera. What do I like about the iPhone 14 Pro Max? I like a lot. I like it more than the 8 Plus. Now, the interesting thing is people will tell me, well, boy, how do you like it? It must be much different. No, it's not much different because the iPhone 8 Plus and the 14 Pro Max were using the same operating system. Okay, remember, you update your OS. Well, it updates in both cameras. So the look of the cameras were pretty much the same, except for what the 8 Plus couldn't do physically, like with certain, the cameras were limited with older lenses and older sensors. Okay, so but I really like this camera. It is much better. There's this phone and the camera. A lot of features in the phone that are just great, and the camera is too. As you know, it's convenient, easy to use, unobtrusive. When I travel and people would shy away from my big Canon lens, okay, I can pull the iPhone out, and they're so commonly used. People look at it and they just don't bat an eye. They don't mind you taking a picture with an iPhone or a phone camera. Whereas if I pulled out my Canon, they'd turn away or threaten to punch me in the nose. And you do get decent image quality. Okay. If you want the highest possible image quality, shoot with your DSLR or your mirrorless camera. Okay. If you are willing to sacrifice a little bit of quality for convenience, shoot with your phone camera, but don't use the native camera. Install a different one like Lightroom or Halide or one of those, and shoot in the RAW format. If you want a little more convenience, like you wanted to do some of the processing, if you don't mind what Apple does with the Pro format, then you could go to that. But that, I think, decreases the quality of the image significantly, that I have my doubts about using the Apple Pro RAW format. And it's weatherproof. My goodness. Apple claims that I could drop this phone in the water and it could be, oh no, I forget, but like 11 feet deep water for 30 minutes. Wow. Well, in that case, I wouldn't hesitate to take it out in the rain or the snow. Whereas if it's raining, I may not take my Canon R6, out in the rain. So, ta-da! We have come to the end of the show, guys. Thank you very much. There's my contact information. I won't send you the PowerPoint because it doesn't have much information in it. It just has my talking points. I will send you my 15-page research paper that I put together that has all of the details. Okay, at this point, let's just open it up. If you have a question or a comment, go ahead and unmute yourself and throw it my way.
Dennis, this is Joe Farrell.
Yes, Joe, I recognize that voice.
There's a couple of questions here relating to, could you show us right now quickly how you get your images from the Lightroom phone onto my desktop, or is that an involved process?
That's an involved process. Yeah, there's a little more to it. That would be another lesson.
Okay,
But it is convenient, but it involves syncing is the key word. And if you're that far along in your process and you want to do that, shoot me an email and I'll send you a document that I put together that shows you how to do that. But
Okay.
what happens is you can set up your phone. This is cool. It doesn't matter which, like if I take a picture in the native Apple camera, it automatically gets imported into the Lightroom mobile library on the phone, and then automatically uploaded to the cloud, the Adobe cloud, whenever I'm connected to Wi-Fi. Then automatically downloaded to my desktop computer and imported into Lightroom Classic. But there's enough steps involved there that I can't go over it at this point.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, let me stop share here. Stop share. Stop share. Okay, anything else?
Dennis, I have
Dennis,
a
this
question.
is Dave Marquetto. I want to thank you so much for an awesome presentation. I just have one comment, and I'm all for the iPhone, and it's like it will encourage you to take more pictures, and the more pictures, photographs you take and experiment, because it is so easy once you kind of go beyond the basics, you'll become a better photographer because you'll just use it more. And like you said, sometimes the best camera you have writes the one with you, like on your ship platform there when you took your best photo. And I think that's a good example of it.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. And the thing to keep in mind is the same principles of photography apply. Composition, lighting. The phone camera is just another tool to capture the images that
Exactly.
excite you. So Claire, you had a question?
Yes, I did. When you're using the Lightroom camera, the
Yes.
Lightroom mobile camera,
Yes.
do you turn the iPhone RAW off?
Well, you don't have to. It's the Apple Pro RAW only exists within the native Apple camera.
Okay,
When it's closed, you don't have no other camera has access to that. The Lightroom mobile camera can only access what it is capable of. But the good news is the Lightroom mobile app shoots true RAW files. That's what I like. That's one of the main reasons I shoot with the Lightroom camera. It doesn't use the Apple Pro RAW.
so if you're using the Lightroom camera, can you see the pictures?
Yes.
on
Yeah,
the
it
phone?
does. It does a similar thing. It gives you a JPEG version that
Okay.
you can see. And in fact, the Photos app on the iPhone, is set up to be able to process regular RAW files. So you strictly on your phone, you could take that RAW file into Photos, and you won't know the difference from a JPEG file. The way it works, you'll be looking at it, and you can crop it and change the brightness but you'll just have more latitude in the changes that you make because it's a RAW file.
If you were to pick just, let's say I went out and I took 50 pictures, but there were only 5 that I wanted to put in Lightroom, could I AirPlay them over to my desktop and then put them into Lightroom that way?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. You
Dennis?
can do that. Yes, Joe.
Dennis, if I took a picture using the Apple Pro RAWs and I found one that I really liked and I wanted to send it to my wife, and she's using Windows, would she be able to see that, or does it convert it when you share it to the JPEG format?
Good question. Yes, it converts. And the same thing with an HEIC file. Not every device is capable of dealing with those file formats, at least yet. So the Apple engineers have designed it so when you share, okay, it'll share it in a shareable format, which is typically a JPEG.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so even that HIC, if it's you're doing the loop and the bounce and the long exposure like I was doing, if I would send that, it's sent as a, well, it depends. it could be sent as an MOV file, a movie file, if
Mhm.
you send it as a video, okay? Or if you send it like if a long exposure, it'll lock that in as a long exposure, and the file that ends up being sent is a JPEG with that long exposure effect locked in. Because once you get it on your other computer then, or your phone, you can't change it. It's locked in at that point. But yeah, it's sent as a shareable file.
So that would be true even with the Lightroom mobile camera?
Boom, 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 boom. If I share it. I don't think it's set up that way. The Lightroom mobile one, you have to export it. You can transfer it directly like to your computer or the cloud like I do. And if you're shooting the raw DNGs, they'll transfer as raw DNGs. Okay. But you can't email them directly. So what you have to do, if you want to send, let's say from your phone and you took it as a raw file in Lightroom mobile, you export it. And when it exports it as a JPEG.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, you got to go through the export process,
Do-
just
do
like you would have to with Lightroom Classic.
Which camera do you use the most, or do you use Lightroom mobile all the time?
No, I switch around a little bit. If I'm in a situation, well, there's sometimes when I like what that Apple Pro Raw does, like it's amazing in low light what pictures you can get, although the backgrounds sometimes do look overly processed. I switch around. Sometimes I like that live photo effect, or I want to do portrait mode, and that's only in the native Apple camera. But mostly for the general shooting with my iPhone, I'll shoot the DNG regular RAW files with the Lightroom mobile camera.
Okay, thanks, Dennis.
Sure.
Great presentation, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very nice presentation, Dennis.
Thanks, Patty. Yeah, that's quite a compliment because I know you use your phone a lot.
Yeah, I do. And I switch back and forth between Pro Camera and the native camera.
Oh, okay. Very good. Oh, so you use Pro Camera.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. And why do you use Pro Camera over the native Apple camera?
Because I can shoot raw.
That's the
Gives-
primary reason.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
very good. Very good.
Yep.
Thank you. Oh, and you don't use Lightroom because you don't subscribe to Lightroom.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
super. Good reason.
Dennis, a great presentation. Thank you. I learned a lot.
That was fun. Yeah, that was fun. And what we could get into later if you want would be like using the Lightroom mobile camera and shooting that raw format, or we could get into processing in an app like the Photos app, which is native to the camera, or Snapseed, which is another popular processing app that you download and install, and it's free from Google.
Mhm.
Snapseed is free. So if you're thinking at all about processing your images on your phone or your iPad, highly recommend downloading Snapseed.
Well,
It's very
Dennis,
useful.
like the pictures you showed right at the beginning of the building, and you added some stuff and you made them look really cool. Can you do that if you use you transfer them to your computer with Lightroom? And then are there some equivalent programs either on Mac or Windows that can give you that same kind of an effect?
Some, yes. Some of you know that I use a program from Exposure called SnapArt. And
Mhm.
if I want to add a painterly effect, that program or a cartoonish look to the
Mhm.
picture, that app, that program will do that. The thing is that there are so many phone apps with all specialized purposes. Like if you like to do multiple exposures, can't do that, in camera normally, but what you can do is in post, you can use an app that you pick the pictures you want to combine, and then it allows you to overlay them, line them up, and then change the opacity of the upper one to let the lower one shine through. So there are a multitude of apps that are available to do specific things. You can do things like add textures, add painterly effects, add birds to your scene. There's a lot, but many of those effects can be done on your laptop, on your desktop computer with various software programs. But here's an interesting difference though too. You might pay $49 for SnapArt or $79. I forget what it was. And it's a good program and I don't mind paying that. But you would pay like $3.99 for the phone app that
Yep.
would do the same thing. Right,
Snap-
Patty?
Snapseed will do the double images in Snapseed for free.
Oh, okay, there you go. There you go.
It'll add textures for free, although some of the Painterly ones are specific to that. You can make a rock background to your paper. Like you can put all kinds of textures on it.
Mhm.
They're incredible. I mean, I use them all the time. And
Yeah.
you can adjust the amounts that you apply so easily with your finger as a slider. You know, take it down to just the tiniest little bit or make it
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, but the price is just,
Well, that's the
Just
beauty
incredible.
of it, is the price.
I mean, you talk about the different lenses on your phone camera, like
Yep.
the Samsung has a 230 millimeter. You can change lenses. Well, what would those lenses cost you with your regular DSLR or your mirrorless? What
And
would
those
those programs cost you? Yeah.
The add-on lenses that you can buy at the
All the
camera
clip
shop,
ones.
the clip-ons, you can do a zoom lens on there. And a professional quality lenses, a zoom lens for your camera, for your phone is like $140.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't mention that, but that's in my handout that you'll get tomorrow. You can, as Patty said, you can buy the lenses that actually clip on, or they're part of a case that goes over the whole phone, and they line up exactly. Well, you buy the case for the particular model of phone you have, and they line up exactly with the lenses. And then you might have a true macro lens, or a real macro lens, or you might have a super telephoto that would give you that extra. And the quality is pretty darn good.
Fisheye lenses.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's tons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the lenses that the iPhone 14 Pro Max has give you most of that range. And now with that macro capability, you hardly need a clip-on. I can get within a
love
couple
that little
centimeters.
macro capability.
Yeah, I can get within a couple centimeters of my subject, and it's incredible. And you know what else happens? Because of the very small sensor, the depth of field is incredible.
Yeah.
When I started shooting real macro, during the pandemic with my big camera and my expensive lenses, I was frustrated with the such limited depth of field, and I went to focus stacking. Okay, I was seeing pictures on Facebook macro groups of incredible pictures of really small insects, and I was amazed at how sharp they were. But I was even more amazed at the depth of field when I found out, pardon me, that they were shot with a phone camera. Small sensor, the physics of it is the small sensor increases the depth of field,
Mhm.
and you don't need to go to the focus stacking nearly as much. Okay, any final questions before we wrap it up? It is almost 9 o'clock, guys.
Let's hear if those that are left here, turn on your speakers, please, and let's give Dennis a big hand. Great presentation. That was
Thanks,
really-
Dennis.
Great.
Thanks, Dennis. Really
Thank
nice.
you.
Dennis.
Great presentation.
Thanks for attending and thanks for the
Very
questions.
nice, thank you.
If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, give me a call. As I say, Apple is not forthright in divulging a lot of the information about how these phone cameras work. You got to do a lot of research. Some of it was done through the camera apps, the manufacturers of the camera apps, like the guy who runs the Halide and makes the app there. He had a couple great videos about how phone cameras actually work. Okay, guys, thank you very much. That'll end it for the night. Take care. See you
Okay.
later.
Night.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks again, Dennis. Great
You're welcome.
session.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. Thanks for attending.
Dennis, those apps that you talk about, that I will not want to do that on my phone. I cannot see me doing this, okay? That's just not what I'm gonna do. And that's why I was asking if you could get those on my computer or my laptop.
Yes, I know what you mean. Not one for one. Like you can't get the same apps because they're just designed differently. But you can get ones that will do similar things.
Okay, is
for
that
the
going to
most
be in
part.
your PDF?
No, because that's beyond the scope of this presentation, the editing,
Alright.
the editing.
And-
We'll have to have a special session on that.
Yeah, and you're on overtime anyways right now, right?
Yeah. Oh, I
Hey,
was trying
Dennis,
to
this
figure out
is,
how to turn, let me turn off the recording here. We'll end that and then we can chat if you.